Welcome to the Josh Scanlon Podcast. It is Wednesday, June 5th, 2019. Today I'm going to share with you real estate investing tips that I learned from my dad and from punk rock music. Interesting, huh? What punk rock and my own old dad can teach you about real estate investing. I bet that has your thoughts intrigued, huh? Your interest piqued. So let's talk about that. Before we do, of course, we got to bring on a couple of the sponsors who sponsor the podcast to keep it going and to make me rich like Mr. Burns. Make me rich. I appreciate you listening to the sponsors for sure. So hang in there. We'll be right back to talk about how real estate investing you can profit if you listen to punk rock and lessons from your old buddy Josh's dad. So hang tight. Hey, Josh Scanlon Podcast listeners. Want to share your opinions, give feedback, or tell me what you're thinking? Send me a voice message. Voice messages are an easy way for you to send me an audio that might end up on an episode. You know how I do these Q&As all the time? It's actually cool to get an email, but it's kind of even cooler to get the voice message as well. This is the latest feature from Anchor, the platform I use to make this podcast, which I cannot recommend highly enough. Anchor is awesome. The fact that they're adding this, it's free, my friends. It's free. There's no reason not to do this. It's just fantastic. So if you want to get your words out there, send me a voice message. All right, here are some things I'd love to hear from you. Questions you have for me. What you think of the episode that we just listened to, what you think of whatever topic. You tell me about your topic. One of the good ones, who do you think I should interview? I think that's fantastic. And I see all your message. I listen to them. Look, man, I'm going to put them on there if they're compelling enough for the vast listening audience. Vast, which isn't all that vast as we sit here. But my YouTube audience is pretty vast, which is cool. And my Anchor audience, my podcast, as I build it, could be as more. So if you want to help the podcast and you have some questions for me, man, just send an audio, send a voicemail. All right. How you do it? You send me a voice message right now from wherever you're listening. Just tap the link in my show notes. I can't wait to hear it, man. It's going to be awesome. Like I said, I definitely will play some on live too. It'll be pretty cool. So don't say, hey, this is Josh Scanlon from your, wherever. I mean, you could if you don't. I'd prefer you didn't. Just say, hey, this is Santa Claus from North Pole or something like that. I mean, I'm not saying make it up, but you can say, hey, there's a Bob from Philadelphia. That'd be fine. But don't say, I live at 121 Main Street. No. We don't want that. So anyway, do that. That'd be cool. I hope you do it. Thanks now. All right, you know how much I love Anchor.fm or the Anchor app, and that's just ANCHOR.FM. It's the easiest way to make a podcast, without question. Everything you need is here for free. You can use it right from your computer, which is what I'm doing on a Chromebook. You can use it from your phone. I haven't dived too deeply into the phone app yet, but I plan on doing it for sure. Tons of tools you can use to edit, just tons of stuff on that you can use that Anchor provides you. Again, did I say it's all for free? You can actually make money doing this as well. They have sponsorships. Well, this is a sponsorship right here. It's look, even if it's just awesome. I love it. Huge fan of Anchor.fm. They put your podcast on all the Google, Apple, iTunes, Spotify. Literally you don't need to do anything. You just upload something, you talk, and you send it along. It's fantastic. And it's a good way to build your audience, good way to get people to know your story. A huge fan. I cannot recommend Anchor enough. If it wasn't for Anchor, we don't have a podcast. So get on there, Anchor.fm, go to the Anchor app and start your own podcast today. I'm telling you, it's fantastic. All right, thanks. All right, so before we do, just got to say 2-2 Stanley Cup Finals. The Bruins, man, they laid an egg the other day against the Blues. They could have kind of wrapped up this series, go back to Boston up 3-1, but unfortunately Chara got hurt and their defense was just lacking a little bit. And so it'll be game 5 tomorrow, the critical game 5 in Boston. What's my take? Man, I don't know. As a native New Englander who's been through the many years, at this stage, I'm thinking the Blues 6-6. Which is nuts because when Boston has dominated, they've dominated. But the other day, St. Louis had the puck in the Bruins zone for just an inordinate amount of time. And the Bruins didn't give up any goals in this flurry about 10 minutes. I was like, but we shall see. So game 5 tomorrow night in Boston. Ooh, nerve-wracking. All right. So let me share first and foremost about my dad. I don't have a relationship with my dad. My dad is a dry drunk, and I would say I am too, frankly. A dry drunk is someone who no longer partakes in the devil's liquor, the devil's liquid, I should say, but maybe hasn't quite changed their the way their personality. Now, look, I haven't talked to my dad in 20 years. I don't know. But I mean, he might be. I think he's a Christian guy now. Good on him. I don't know. A guy named Jack Spurko from the Survival Podcast said a number of times, just because they're family, you don't have to be. Just because they're family doesn't mean you can allow for blood to be drawn. If that makes sense. And I'm paraphrasing and butchering it, but that always meant something to me because I've always felt like, how do you not have a relationship with your dad? And at the end of the day, it's one of those things that just because your bloodline doesn't mean you have to be miserable. And it is what it is at this stage. I don't care. I don't want to say I don't care. I'm not callous about it, but what are you going to do? I mean, you just move on. I got my 4 kids, got my wife, and you move on for sure. But with that said, I mean, he's still my dad from the old days. And, some of the lessons I learned from him, good and bad. And I've learned a lot of lessons on bad money management that I was able to not be like he and my mom. I said, I don't want to do it that way. So because I've been a lot more frugal, a lot more conservative than either my dad or my mom were, which is wonderful. But I did learn some good things from my mom and from my dad. And I have a sparse relationship with my mom at this stage too. It's just the hippies of the day. It's just sad. Let's just put it this way. They engage in a lot of illicit activity that I think screw their minds up. No other way around that. And their kids suffered for that for sure. Whatever, you move on. That's all you can do is you move on because you got to take care of number one, which is you. But I did learn a lot of financial understanding from my mom because she was a bookkeeper by trade. And I was always interested in stocks and investing from her. She always had me pique my interest and curiosity there. My dad was always an entrepreneurial at heart, not a good businessman, but he saw opportunity when it existed. And both these guys are still alive, by the way. But he never could really... He was always the first in, but never was able to get the huge benefits of that, if that makes sense. So let me share with you a couple of thoughts. Now, my parents bought a house in Peaks Island back in the 70s when it's called Welfare Island. They bought one for like $350. They sold that for a little bit of a profit, and they bought one for $5,000 that it's probably worth $400,000 today. Now, look, in of itself, that's the inflation you got to take into it. But what happened, and that was when they're still married. When I was probably about 9, I think they got divorced. But that could have been a very profitable endeavor if they would have just stayed in there. My mom always tells me, like, if I would have stayed in there, blah, blah, blah. And it's sad. But long story short, I've always learned the deal of buying value products from my parents. Stuff that's been beaten down, that has really nowhere to go other than up or stay flat. But even if it stays flat, you're not really losing anything because it's already beaten down. So they bought this house in Peaks Island. My dad, I think, was a carpenter by trade back in San Francisco. I think he met my mom when my mom was going to San Francisco State. I think my dad was working on the docks doing carpentry work or something like that. And they met on a bus in 1967. So that tells you their hippiness, if you shall. And look, I'm just going, I haven't spoken to my dad in a long, long time, but this is what I recall. Anyway, so they met in San Francisco. So my dad was always good with his hands, and that never flown down to me. I've never been that good in terms of being able to put stuff together. I just don't have it. I always had my mom's mathematical mind. I don't have my dad's ability to use my hands to fix things. I just don't see it. Like my son, who's got dyslexia, he sees stuff essentially in 3D. He can see it and fix it in my way. If he wants, he's kind of lazy, but he can do it just like that. I don't have that ability. My wife does. I don't. Hell, just putting up a freaking raised bed, it takes me longer than it would take someone else because I don't visualize it. It's always been a point of frustration for me. But as I got older, I recognized that's just the way I am. And it's fine. And anyway, but my dad he's always been able to do stuff, just like that. Always a tradesman by heart, if you will, or by genes, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, so he fixed up the house in Peaks Island, and when I say fix it up, there was a guy who shared with me a time where he screwed it up royally, and I think a window broke, and my dad was mad. It was just funny. So at the end of the day, but he's always been good at fixing stuff up. So he bought this house on Peaks Island. He fixed it up. I think he redid the roof. I remember painting it in the middle of summertime, just miserable. I just wanted to play, and he had me up there on the ladder. Horrible, but long story short, so they were able to finally sell it for a profit after they got divorced. Now, my dad, though, he moved to D.C. area, all right, and he finally had a good job, his first, I think, since I was alive. And ultimately, I moved in there with him. He was going to buy a house, I think, on South Capitol Street, right outside the nation's capital. And his thought was always that, here's the Capitol building, and literally 2 blocks down the street, there's no whites. It's all black. It's Gangsterville like crazy. Hood. There's just no, it's I don't even think it was public housing back then. I don't remember, but I remember he said the opportunities here is immense. It's immense. I'll never forget that. And he said that, and now he was thinking about buying something, but I said, dude, I'm a poor white kid from an island off the coast of Maine. You're going to throw me into an area to go to high school where there's no other whites. I mean, look, you can say all day long, that's right. I don't care. It's reality. You're not going to send your child, who essentially has only met 2 black people his whole life up to that point, into a high school where there's no other white people. You're just not going to do that. So he did move to the suburbs, just basically over the DC line into Silver Spring. Because I think cooler minds prevailed, but even that was a culture shock for me, and I adapted. It was fine, but at the end of the day, he said at the end of the day, South Capitol Street in this area, which is literally within walking distance from the nation's capital, is going to be booming. It's only a matter of time, and he was right. But he didn't take advantage of that. So what happened was later on down the road, he bought a house in Alexandria, Virginia, about a walk, just a walk to the subway stop, the metro, a kind of dilapidated, rundown area of Alexandria, Virginia. But he bought this house, and it was right next to Jack Taylor Toyota. And I remember Jack Taylor Toyota is where they did the service, and they sold used cars. In fact, I bought one of my first ever cars there. But my dad's thought was, look, the subway's right there. This is dilapidated. It's literally, you can walk to the subway and you can get on the subway and go into work in DC, DOD or whatever it is you're going to do. And you'll be back in no time. It's like literally 1 or 2 subway stops from, I think it was Foggy Bottom or whatever the DC, most of the government stuff was. And he said, why is this not booming? But it was more than just why, because there's a lot of places in the inner cities that aren't booming. And it's not just, they're close to town. But there's a second part of this. That is one thing. They're close proximity to where all the action is. But there's a second thing. He said, you got to find where the gay people are moving in. And I said, what do you mean by that? Because the gays have always been ostracized. They know they have the guts to go into areas where they're ostracized because there's no skin off their back. Gays have always been ostracized. Now, not so much anymore. I get that, but still, it's interesting now. Hear me out. So you take this predominantly black community that are poor, all right, and within close proximity to a metro subway line or close proximity to the action, the DC area or whatever it is. The gays who've always been ostracized and they know what it's like to have eggs thrown at them. They know what it's like to be yelled at, nasty names and stuff, even if they know what it's like to be beaten up. I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying this is reality. Because they know what it's like for that, they will go in there without any hesitation and start rebuilding the town. And this is the Delray section of Alexandria, if any of y'all are familiar with that area. And what happens is once the gays go in there, and I hate to say it, but it's basically colonize it. I mean, the gays will go in there. A lot of them are white, not all of them. But then they'll make it safer for other white people to go in there, the hipsters. All right. And when the hipsters come in, essentially they're not going to gentrify it so much right out of the gate, but they're going to make it more and more expensive, which will drive out the poor folk down there. And if you look, I tell you, it inherently makes sense. So you're thinking Two things you got to be finding out. This is what my dad said. He goes, you got to find out what's close to what urban people like. They like having a metro stop close by, a subway stop, public transportation. They like being close to the action, whatever the action is, close to some downtown thing for sure. And then you got to find out where the gays are moving. And if you can find out that, you can go in there in front of the hipsters who are going to come. The hipsters from George Washington University, American University, who love the idea of DC, but they're too scared. I'm going to share with you how this reflects back on punk rock here in just a second. And then you're going to go down there and you're going to buy up a property and you're going to fix it up, and you'll probably sell it to a gay couple, or you'll sell it to a gay guy who will rent it out with a couple other gay guys. Or by then you might just sell it out to the hipsters that would be moving in. And in fact, what his whole premise was, if you can hold out long enough for these places to establish themselves, the hipsters will soon be moving in, and then you can make a tidy profit. So he bought this place, I forgot, Duncan Street or something like that. I can't remember, but right next to Jack Taylor Toyota. It was literally right next to the service center for Jack Taylor and on Mount Vernon Ave. A lot of immigrants are moving here, a lot of Chinese. There's a wonderful Korean restaurant coming down the street. There's some hole in the wall, freaking Mexican places, El Salvadorian places that are moving in as well. So you got the gays coming in. You got poor folks already there, inhabiting in there. You got the immigrants coming in. People, again, who have been, I hate to say ostracized, the gays have, the immigrants not so much, but the immigrants are okay with living in rundown places because that's where they come from. India, they come from rundown places in El Salvador, Guatemala, things of that nature. All right, so they come down to these places. The gays are there. You got a close proximity to the subways and whatnot. And what happens is they start buying up the property. Now, this hurts the blacks who are already there. Don't get me wrong, it does. It hurts those people. They get kicked out ultimately. And I'll share again this song that I'll put on the end of the show notes to talk exactly about that. But that's the way it is. Now, hopefully it won't get gentrified. I know my mom, I'm not sure my dad used to protest like crazy against the gentrification of Old Town, Portland, Maine. And I can't remember if she won the whole thing or not. But anyway, I know like old port section of Portland, Maine, they were trying to gentrify that. And they didn't, thank God, because that's wonderful now. But I think part of like the West End, I think they did gentrify it to some degree. And that's where once they gentrify it, it drives out the poor people. And Maine is not made black, so it drives out the poor whites and then immigrants. And then, the hipsters come in, the rich guys. A lot of them, which are gay too, by the way. But anyway, so this is what happens. So you got an immigrant population, you got gays coming in, and that ultimately gives a green light for the wealthier hipsters to come down here. The empty nesters, again, a lot of them are gay, but a lot of liberal-minded people who love the idea of being close to DC, but didn't want to risk it themselves. I hope that makes sense. All right. So then what happened too? So that, and I think he made a tidy profit on it. I don't think he held it long enough though. I know he made a profit on it. Oh, I'm going to give you an example. So when I was in college, and this is where I was living at my dad's house when I was in college, and basically just essentially living there rent free, which is nice. But essentially, he wanted me to live there to keep the squatters away. And the squatters, a lot of punk rock. So say squatters' rights. Nah, screw that. You don't own the place. I still believe in private property. If you don't own it, you don't have a right to someone else's property. That's all there is to it. Charlotte used to work for a real estate attorney up in Boston and tell me this a long, long time ago, 20, 25 years ago, and tell me the nightmare of trying to kick squatters out of their home. Essentially, the squatters would just assume ownership of it, and the actual owner was the one who had to go through freaking trials and tribulations to reassert his authority over his own house. It's nuts. Anyway, I don't believe in that squatters' right crap, not at all. But anyway, my dad wanted me to live there in order to get the squatters from thinking about taking over the ownership of my dad's house. And so I lived there rent free, which is nice. I was in a hardcore punk rock band, so we'd practice in my basement, and it was pretty cool because the basement was just some, again, dilapidated house that my dad had yet to fix up much. But I remember we had right next to us was I think 2 or 3 poor black families, and I remember one time coming home, and there's a little poor black girl who was using the water hose from our water. He got one of those little hoses, and she was filling up these little, gallon buckets. And I said, "Hey, what you doing?" She goes, "Hey, I'm just, we ran out of water. The water, my mom forgot to pay the water bill or whatever it was, but can I have some of your water so we can have some water?" And I said, "That's fine." I wasn't paying that stuff. I'm sure my dad wouldn't have cared. But essentially what was happening is she was siphoning our water because they couldn't pay their water bill or they got shut off or something like that. I said, "Yeah, it's fine." So I'm sure they did that probably daily. I just happened to catch them this time, and I didn't care. I mean, at the end of the day, my dad was paying for it. My dad, I don't know if he would have cared. As long as they weren't squatting in our home is all he really cared about. And on top of that, we were a pretty loud band. So I figured, well, if that's what it takes to get them not to file a cop complaint when we're playing loud and drunk at night, so be it. And that was, but anyway, long story short, so you start seeing the gradual, not government-sponsored gentrification, but the hipsters moving in and building up these places. And again, it starts with the gays, it starts with the immigrants, but then it starts with the hipsters who got the money, the dentists and things like that, and they start building up these places. All right, so my dad saw another opportunity in Arlington. Now, you might not know Arlington, Virginia, but let me just tell you, man, if you don't got $1 million, you ain't living in Arlington, Virginia anymore. It's nuts. Actually, it's funny because the guitarist in my band, his mom had bought a house in Arlington, Virginia, right up the street from Boston Mall back in the 60s or 70s. And Arlington, Virginia was a hellhole back then. It was just run down. Anyway, those suckers now go for probably $800,000-$900,000 because they're what's called tear down properties. Tear down properties means rich people come in, they buy the house up, not for the home, but for the land, unless they're going to rent it out. But they buy it for the land, they tear it down, and they put up this freaking Taj Mahal of an eyesore. And actually, ironically, that's exactly what happened on Peaks Island. I'll never forget, probably 25 years ago, my mom sent me this article about some rich lady from Texas bought like 4 acres or something like that on Peaks Island on back shore and put this eyesore of a monstrosity of a house up there. And it's just horrible. And, that was, but it led to more and more people moving in. I mean, just the rich people, attorneys and doctors and whatnot. Wi-Fi helped with that, internet access. My mom again predominantly, I don't know about my dad, protested against monopolies on the boats. So we now had more effective and efficient boats to take you back and forth to town, because the boat line was trying to assert its monopoly and exclude competition. And so the capitalists of my parents, even though they were hippies, said, no, you can't exclude competition. What the hell's that about? We want more competition because it'll create better for us to be able to go to the town on a boat. And they fought like that, and they ended up somewhat winning that. So the competition, while sparse, was still there as competition for now the people who have benefited from Mom's work as a protester. But anyway, so my dad was looking at Boston Mall, that Boston area again, right? Is literally, you can walk down Clarendon Boulevard or Wilson Boulevard in Arlington and take a left at the bottom of the hill and go over the Key Bridge, and you'll be in Georgetown. I mean, it's literally, you can make that walk. I've done it a million times. Hell, I used to courier for my dad on my bike doing that. It's nuts. And so anyway, he said, this is primo land here. Immigrants moving in, gays are moving in, slowly but surely. Some old, just crappy bars that had, was culture, were becoming not quite trendy yet, but we're beginning to. And my dad saw that. He said, the gays are coming in, the immigrants coming in, they're opening up these restaurants, they're opening up these, bars and stuff. They're starting to fix up these buildings. And it wasn't forced gentrification, but it was demand. So he bought up this place to put a bar in there called Iota. And it took off, and it literally just closed down. I don't know what happened. And this is back in 93, 94, middle 90s. And it took off like a bat out of hell. And now Arlington and everything around there, Clarendon Boulevard, Wilson Boulevard, I mean, those houses are going for like over 7 figures. Easy. Boston Mall is freaking, if you ever go to Arlington now and you see it now, it was not like that at all 20 years ago. It was run down. And now, I mean, literally Boston Mall, I remember going there, it's like, this is a crappy mall. Now it's like where the Capitals play, that's where the training camp is, at Boston Mall. It's nuts. It's awesome, but it's expensive as all can be. And the reason for that is because it's literally a walk into Georgetown over the Key Bridge. But there's a metro stop there. They got the George Mason now law schools there, which is you got the courthouse, Arlington County courthouse is down there. It's just been that has been gentrified without question. It's nuts how much that is now. And now so tons of rich people in condos live there, and the people from the day, hopefully they sold their house for a pretty penny. But if they sold too early, they missed out. And so there you go. That's from my dad. Find out where the gays were. Find out what's close proximity to the action in DC's DuPont Circle, Adams Morgan. Is it within walking distance? Is it within a train stop? Find out where it is. Find out where it's kind of run down and criminal infested now. Essentially, that's going to mean blacks. I hate to say it, but it's going to mean there are lots of poor blacks living there, which are being dominated by gangsters. And I'll share with you this in real life here in just a second. Find out where they are. So it's poor, it's cheap, it's run down. White people are afraid to move in there. The only people who are interested, who've got the guts to move in there, are immigrants and gays. Find out where those people are moving and freaking go in there, hell's bells. Now, my brother's telling me too about a place in, I think it was Newport News on the waterfront. And I remember I was sitting there, I can't remember. It's like, again, 20 years ago, but I remember, I don't know, maybe it was Norfolk. I can't remember. But anyway, it wasn't Virginia Beach. I think it's Norfolk. And I remember sitting down there. Maybe it was his anniversary. We were driving around getting ready for his wedding, as a matter of fact. It was our bachelor party for him. It's just he and I. And we were driving around. I remember parking on a waterfront property. And it was run down. And I remember we were the only white people to be seen anywhere. But it's waterfront. And but I remember telling my brother, I said, man, this place could be booming. Just according to Dad's theory of the gays and immigrants coming in and what's currently poor. I guarantee that place is freaking booming now. Anyway, so that's lesson number one. Immigrants and gays, you find out where they are, find out where it's poor, find out where it's criminal, crime heavy, because whites won't go there, which means whites are holding back on investing in it, which means you can buy on the cheap. All right. So let me go to the second thing on punk rock. So punk rock, again, there's tons of stuff about squatters. I hate all that stuff. Squatters again, people don't own the property, move into a property that is basically unoccupied and assume ownership. And in some big cities, they'll have squatters' rights and all that. And just as stupid. But all right, so this is a song from the Tossers. And I'll put I'll link to this, and I'll also play the song at the end. It's called Chicago. All right. So what I'm going to read, let's see here. I'm going to read some of the lyrics because it's so prescient about how it's the same thing what my dad was talking about. So he says, okay, well, we had a mouse right in our house and we were afraid to move, but I'd never trade that time we spent huddled in the front room. No chill or rats or poverty can quell my love for you or for this dump we're standing in because this is my home too. Well, I sit out on my front porch step. I watch the gangsters selling smack, and I call a cop when girls walk by and they give her a smack or crack. I call the cops when a girl walks by and they give her a crack, the gangsters. Oh, I like to get my beer and sit on my front step or by the store, hanging out where white folks fear to tread. Yes, this is my home for sure. No gangsters can deface it because it's still the same to me. Sometimes the bullets frighten me, but I speak up, you see. Oh, I can navigate the subway sect just like a weathered pro, and anywhere I want to go, that's where I go. And he talks about Chicago, where there are assholes everywhere. Chicago, we are 15 pints from all our cares. Where your wallet's like a sieve, and that's where all the gangsters live. Chicago is where we can afford to live. Now, keep going. I'm going out all by myself. No victims roll for me. No, I'm not transgressed by lovers or friends or owed something, you see. And here's a critical thing. Ready? Well, the new condos, they're coming fast, and the rents have gone sky high. Just because we're seen as pioneers, they start to build for all the whites. You see what I'm saying? They start to build for all the whites because they are seen as pioneers. Who are the real pioneers? And this, maybe there's a punk rock guy, I don't know. but it's the gays and the immigrants. So remember, this is where all the gangsters live, where bullets fly by him and it makes him scared. Now, he's a white guy, and there's where now he says, what do you say here? We're hanging out where white folks fear to tread. Yeah, that's my home for sure, because the white folks got the money. We know this. I mean, and Asians too, I get that. But at the end of the day, the immigrants and the gays are the people who go to these places to build them up. And now the new condos are coming fast and the rents have gone sky high. And just because we're seen as pioneers, they start to build for all the whites. All right, so let's keep going. Now he turns it. That was kind of like almost like a country-esque bluegrass song there. But now they turn on the mics or the guitars and electrify the guitars. He says, they effing gentrified my home. They effing, he's using the real word. They effing gentrified my home. Left affordable housing there to roam. They effing gentrify my home. Daily kicking ethnic vendors off the street. Ordinance nothing cheap to eat. It's amazing because the tossers are big libs, and yet Daley is a big lib too. And yet Daley, Bill Blasio, all the big city mayors, what do? They gentrify these neighborhoods. They kick ethnic vendors off the street, and they ordinance everything so heavy that there's nothing cheap to eat. I remember we lived in Phoenix. I was a big brother for a little guy, Alex Fontes, and his mom, I forgot her name, Cecilia, I think. Anyway, she was a legal immigrant, and she used to have. She would go, man, just a freaking great story. Look, I don't like illegal immigrants. I mean, immigration. We have a right to police up our borders, absolutely. But I would love to have people like Cecilia here, as long as they do it right. But that's the thing. The immigration system is so jacked, we give priority to people who freaking skirt the line. It's nuts. I'd love to have Cecilia here. Go through, says she wants to start a taco business to sell tacos to hungry Mexicans who are roofing in Phoenix and Guatemalans and El Salvadorians. She basically would home make these tacos, put them in tinfoil, and go to where the essentially legal immigrants were putting houses up in the middle of the hot sun, around lunch, and she would make a mint. It was awesome. But she had to do it under cover of darkness, essentially, not because she was an illegal, but because the ordinance said, we got to make sure your tacos are safe. So they made her buy a freaking mobile kitchen. They didn't care that she was illegal. They cared she's selling tacos that were made in her home that they couldn't regulate to make sure they were safe. The whole thing is nuts. So she had to invest $25,000 into a mobile kitchen to bring it basically one of these taco carts up there to go where the the Mexican laborers were, or the immigrant labor was. I mean, it's freaking insane. They didn't care about her being illegal. They cared about, we got to make sure that you're not giving people cholera or whatever the hell that is, or salmonella. I said, this is freaking nuts. It's nuts. I remember she was despondent. I'd never forget talking to her, and she spoke a little bit of English, and Alex translated. But I just never forget. It's like, and she's trying to raise $25,000. This is back in the late 90s. So what does that do for immigrants? It says, I got to do it all under the cover of the darkness. I can't raise $25,000. Ah! All right. So anyway, Bill Daley, the Democrat mayor, is kicking ethnic vendors off the street, ordinancing them so there's nothing left cheap to eat. No more vendors in front of restaurants, because Daley says they attract vermin to their haunts. But I don't think that's a targeted vermin that he wants. See the copper with his badge and gun? He's not hiding anymore from anyone, so you better collect your crap and run. New shopping fronts are popping up all around, driving our affordability out of town. You think they no longer want us around. Public housing is coming down by federal mandate, all of whom they promised to relocate. And he says something about Rick Lazio's bill passed Congress, but they just segregated them back from where they came. So it's just segregating them from where they came. Now, I'm not sure. I know what he's talking about, but I don't know exactly what the Rick Lazio bill was. It's interesting anyway. But all right, so let's keep going down here. So neighborhoods split by highways lined, dividing different races by color lines. Old Mayor Daley put them there in the ever old grand old time. Now, here's this critical again. Real world hype drives the rent sky high. Now, MTV-age yuppies want to buy. The city's got the exorbitant tax, but in the real world of Chicago, so remember MTV did that real world thing, and that really drove a lot of the yuppies, the hipsters want to go downtown, so they get their degrees from University of Georgia. What's that one in Rutgers? They say, I want to live in Manhattan or wherever it is. But in the real world of Chicago, not that fake MTV world, the real world of Chicago, someone was shot outside the apartment and they died. I tell you, it's just so, again, and there's so many songs like that with punk rock, just again, talking about, now he's not saying it, my man from the Tossers who wrote that article, he's not saying about real estate investing, but put two and two together, man. Put two and two together. If you're going to buy a piece of real estate, wouldn't you want to buy in advance of where the wealthy are going to go to? I mean, yes, it's a risk. It is a risk. I get it. But if you go to, let's just use this for an example, in D.C., South Capitol Street, so they drove all the poor blacks out and they all moved to PG County. Now, I think they might be starting to come back, not the poor blacks, but I think there's crime kind of popping back up in D.C. and I forgot why, but they drove all the poor blacks out of parts of South D.C. and they went to Prince George's County. So what does that mean? I don't know if you could have got in front of that in terms of PG County, but I don't know. But anyway, so what used to be, again, black, it was all D.C. was literally the chocolate city. That's what they used to call it. And I don't know if they still do. They probably do, actually. But still, it's not as chocolate as it was before. You see what I'm saying? And so because it's become gentrified. And we just saw this Tosser song, MTV, the trendy guys, the hipsters taking over, man. And when these guys takes over, what happens? It drives the whites to move in, to drive the rent sky high because new condos are coming in. And they effing gentrified my home. So what do you do with that? Well, you can gripe and say, that's not fair to the poor. I get all that. Yeah, no, that's right. Or you can do like my dad did, which is say, look, this is inevitable. The power structure that be will win. And that is the government sponsored by the wealthy real estate developers. But the wealthy real estate developers aren't going to take the risk before the pioneers move in, my friends. The pioneers are the gays and the immigrants. Once they go in there, then on top of that, you'll start seeing the hipsters starting to, say, and there'll be some hipsters that move in there. And then all of a sudden the wealthy developers say, interesting. And that's when it gets, this rents start going sky high. And that's when you can get out from underneath your investment and make a tidy little lump sum without a whole lot of money at risk. Now, this all goes back to value. You got to buy stuff that's cheap. You buy low and sell high. It goes back to stocks. It goes to bonds. It goes to real estate. What you're doing when you're buying a real estate investment is you're buying it low, i.e. it's in the middle of drug dealing neighborhoods. It's the middle of, there's no wealthy yuppies moving in. But you're starting to see some semblance of immigrants and gays moving in, and they will bring the money with them behind them because they are the pioneers. Anyway, I hope you find that interesting. It's, I guess some people be offended by that. I frankly don't care. It's a reality on the ground as it is. I'm not a fan of gentrification when the government does that. Because if you look at gentrification, what they did, and there's I can never find this video on YouTube. I think it was Houston or Beaumont, Texas, or something like that. I forgot, but they showed 60s architecture, which replaced the previous, I think it was like 1900 I can't remember, but they showed like the modern architecture of the efficiency crew, the socialistic from East Germany style. And it's freaking horrible. It's sickening. It's sickening. So the left took over architecture. And they did it not for the view, but for the efficiency, the utility of the buildings. No windows or very few windows. And you can always tell these 70s and 60s buildings. And it's disgusting. And they tore down all the beautiful structures of the past and put up these horrible, horrible buildings down there that it's disgusting. I think they did that part of Maine because I think where my dad used to work was a building like that. There wasn't many buildings, but in terms of the utility of the building, it was great. But in terms of the structure of it, it's just freaking doggone ugly and it's horrible. And that's what my mom was protesting against. Because when they do that, then, the people got the money start saying, this is safer now. They moved out all the poor. We can move in, buy a condo. And you're looking back and saying, why did you allow that to happen? So as much as I don't have a relationship with my mom and my dad or mom that much, my mom particularly, my dad I don't, but as much as I don't have a relationship, I do look at fondly of the fact they stood up, at least my mom, I'm not sure about my dad, but I know my mom did, stood up against that crap. And because of that, architecture is better off in Portland, Maine than what it could have been if they hadn't. It's anyway, so a little bit, issue on how to invest in real estate, a little bit track through time. Don't look at old as bad. That's another thing too. The 60s and 70s, soulless architecture, just soulless. Look at that as bad. But if it's old, don't look at it as bad. Because there are a lot of good things there. But you can make a pretty hefty mint if you think this through. All right, hey, we'll see you next time. As always, I'll put the song on here so you can listen to it. As always, wherever you find this, give me 5-star rating, comment, share the episode. Go to YouTube channel, youtube.com/Heritage Wealth Planning. If you like what I do and you want to support me, subscribestar.com/Josh Scanlon. It's $10 a month for any premium content I do. Absolutely go there. What else? And just share the videos. And of course, like them as well. All right, we'll see you next time.
While we had a mouse right in our house and were afraid to move, but I'd never trade that time we spent huddled up in the front room. No chill or rats or poverty can quell my love for you, or for this dump I'm standing in, 'cause this is my home too. Oh, Chicago, Chicago, where there's assholes everywhere. Chicago, Chicago, where you're 15 pints from all your cares, or where your wallet's like a sieve, and that's where all of the gangsters live. Chicago, Chicago is where we can afford to live. Well, I sit out on my front porch step, watch the gangsters selling smack, and I call the cops when a girl walks by and I give her a crack. When I like to get my beer and sit on my front step up by the store, hanging out where white folks fear to tread. Yeah, this is my home for sure. Well, no gangsters can deface it, 'cause it's still the same to me. Sometimes the bullets frighten me, but I speak out, you see. Oh, I navigate the subway set just like a weathered pro, and anywhere I want to, you know, that is where I go. Oh, Chicago, Chicago, assholes everywhere. Chicago, Chicago, where you're 15 pints from all your cares, or where your wallet's like a sieve, and that's where all of the gangsters live. Chicago, Chicago is where we can afford to live. Well, I'm going out all by myself, no victims roll for me. No, I'm not transgressed by lovers or friends, or owed something, you see. But I know condos, they are coming fast, and the rents have gone sky high. Just because we're seen as pioneers, they start to build for all the whites. Oh, Chicago, Chicago, oh, there's assholes everywhere. Chicago, Chicago, when you're 15 points from all your cares. Oh, where your wallet's like a sieve, and that's where all of the gangsters live. Chicago, Chicago is where we can afford to live. They fucking gentrified my home. They fucking gentrified my home. You're a father of a house thing on the road. Fucking gentrified my home. They fucking gentrified my home. Fucking gentrified my home. Kicking the neck factors on the street. I got nothing to eat. Nothing to see from the restaurants, cause babies have to truck from a to the horns. A lot of things have to try it from an anyone's. After cover with his badge and his gun, but he's not hiding from anyone. So you better collect your shit and run, run. They fucking justified my home. Fucking justified my home. You don't know that's on the street. We got nothing left to eat. They fucking justified my home. They fucking justified my home. They got it nothing on the street. Oh, then it's nothing good to eat. Shopping fronts popping all around, driving affordability out of town. You'd think they no longer want us around. A public housing coming down by federal mandate. All of them is forced to relocate. From the present Thomas, now enough to eat and drink. Like they fucking gentrified my home. Fucking gentrified my home. Try to kick that going out on the street. I got nothing good to. They fucking gentrified my home. Fucking gentrified my home. Try to kick that going out on the street. They got nothing good to eat. Fuck. Your fucking neighborhood's divided by car lines. Having different faces, but color lines. Daddy put on them diamond numbers that taste right. Well, real world high dives and rank sky high. Now I'm on the jumpies.